John Fakler, we're going to you with story number 6. This is actually coming out of the South Florida Sun Sentinel, Mr. Fakler. I'm going to read you the headline for a couple graphs, and I want you to comment. Headline: The sun is setting on South Florida's condo retirement dream. And this is an opinion piece by a gentleman called David J. Miller. Here we go. I don't know about you, but my vision of retirement has always involved living in a luxury condominium on a beautiful Florida beach. All of my neighbors in this daydream meet at the pool each day for happy hour at sunset, and there are more smiles and laughs to go around than the afters have, and all those big pharma commercials combined. Unfortunately, instead of standard dream of my golden years, I'm now forced to reconcile with the fact that condo living as we previously knew it has changed after the Surfside condominium tragedy. And that's a tragedy where a tower collapsed on the Barrier Island, just north of Miami Beach in south of Sunny Isles Beach. Nearly 100 people died. It was $1 billion settlement. And the feds are currently investigating as to what caused this, because they don't want this to happen again. So that's the Surfside disaster. So let me continue. After the Surfside condominium tragedy, our state and local leaders took a hard look at aging condominium buildings and what safety measures should be put in place to protect condo residents. Legislation was then enacted that mandates extensive inspections and stricter guidelines for older buildings and those with a close proximity to salt water. This new legislation and the required inspections were necessary, but this additional due diligence is also expensive. If an issue is found during the inspection that necessitates repairs being made, the cost to complete such a project could easily be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The story goes on to say, if you were on a fixed income and costs go up or insurance goes up, how are you going to afford it? So what say you, Mr. Fakler? You got here in the 1980s. Why don't you tell us what it was like, what the reputation of Florida was when you got here in the 1980s, and kind of where you see going forward from a retirement perspective?
Well, back in the day, I mean, yeah, you could find yourself a 55 and over place, and there'd be, not a lot of action, not a lot of up or down in the market. But, one of the things I really found interesting in the story, because he goes into the whole condo termination situation, which may be a rapid development. By the way, the author of this piece is actually a litigation real estate attorney. So he's licking his chops. Apparently, I didn't know this, but each unit owner is entitled to 100% of the fair market value of the apartment, which would be great normally. But it could also cause, major litigation due to the variable values in the building. I mean, you got somebody they're all going to be arguing about how much each unit costs.
My sister-in-law said it's worth this. My brother told me it was that.
He also brings up, plus there's fighting over the nuances in the termination agreement. So this guy's, he's licking his chops. He's a litigation attorney. I don't blame him. But, when you look at that, and then you have the escalating special assessments, to cover the costs, that's going to also hinder future buyers, I think, as well. Not really talked about in the story, but it just seems like, it's just like a terrible cycle here with these older buildings. I don't see it getting any better. And also a rush to get everything done, I think, by December of 2024 is one of the deadlines.
For doing a structural integrity study.
Exactly.
And then money has to be earmarked for 2025.
Right, exactly. The money's got to be earmarked now. So that's been the problem all along. The money wasn't there.
Mr. Fakler, let me walk you back. Anybody of a certain age remembers a show called Seinfeld. And in the Seinfeld show, the stereotype was you would retire from New York to places like South Florida.
Sure.
Jerry Seinfeld, the namesake of the show, his parents were retired to Del Boca Vista. It was cheap. They had Cadillacs. They'd go early bird dinners. That was sort of the reputation of Florida for a long time.
Oh yeah.
Am I summarizing that correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, that is flipped on its head. And which was pointed out in this article, because a lot of people like this, even this gentleman was looking forward to retiring in bliss in Florida. Now he can't do it. He's an attorney. So, I mean, everything is, that whole idea of retiring in Florida on a pension is gone, essentially, unless something dramatic happens in the market.
So Mr. Fakler, play it out with me. Let's say a lot of these older types, they can't afford it. They don't want to afford it. People start to bail on Century Villages or the Village in Central Florida, which is all earmarked towards over 55 communities. Do we have enough people to fill the space? What happens to pricing, and where do they go next?
Well, if there's an exodus, there's nobody to fill the space. I mean, if there's really a point where they can't afford it. They're going to move to Carolina, let's say, because they can't afford to live in South Florida. Also, the golf course communities is another question mark. Those were a big draw for, retirees. I don't know what's happening with that market as well. So there's a lot of issues to look at here, and I really think that it's a real question mark.
Catherine and John, we got some questions about affordable housing. We had all these relocations from California, New York, a variety of other places. Suddenly, if the senior retirement dream, if that's over, doesn't this housing suddenly become perfectly situated and suited for maybe those people looking for affordable housing? Or am I missing something? Like who fills the space if these seniors on a fixed income, if they can't afford to be here anymore, whether it's South Florida or it's anywhere in the state of Florida? Anybody have any thoughts?
I don't think it becomes I still think it becomes expensive because you still have to invest in these buildings that are older and the insurance is high and all of these things. So I feel like in a way it's just people are going to try to avoid them because you could rent in something maybe nicer. You don't have to worry about it. I don't know. I don't think that there's like a waiting list of people trying to rush into those properties. Unless
Interesting.
it's to buy in bulk and potentially knock it down or rent it out or do something like that.
So I have a couple of observations. The
Please.
first one being, it's like this drumbeat of negative headlines about condos, like on a near daily basis. I mean, that can't be helping new condo sales either. I mean, if I'm looking to invest in a condo, a brand new condo, I know like in 20 years, I'm going to be like paying some major special assessments. I'm looking at like the future, like,
Yeah.
is this going to be me in 20 years, And then my other observation is, Florida's a pretty big state. I mean, South Florida may be unaffordable now, but there's a lot of parts of Florida that are affordable. I mean, yeah, they're probably more rural inland counties, but I mean, in terms of Florida being dead as a retirement destination, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, you mentioned the Villages. I mean, the Villages is in a very rural area. It's basically, they built the city out of nowhere. If you've ever been there, it's worth a visit. It's just a sprawling community. It's all accessible by golf carts. It's like, and then when you buy a house there, you get golf for life for free.
John, there's a Netflix series or a Netflix
movie,
movie, a documentary on the
really?
Villages. And I'd encourage everybody to check it out. And although I think it tends to deal a little bit more with the relationships and the different social interaction between the owners and the residents of the Villages. But please continue, John.
So the Villages is just an example, but what I'm saying is that there's a lot of rural land. There's a lot of areas that are relatively affordable. So I just think that like in the desirable areas like Miami or Fort Lauderdale or Naples or, Tampa, you're going to have to pay up. I mean, that's just a reality now, but there are many, many parts of Florida that have very affordable prices still.
Interesting. Very affordable prices. So it felt like the days of Del Boca Vista from the Seinfeld series are passe and no one's going to remember it anymore. It doesn't apply anymore.